We've got all of our principals and assistant principals coming on Thursday to Hamilton Career and Technology Center for our opening administrators meeting. Teachers come back next Wednesday. So it's upon us already. Of course, with the new calendar that you guys adopted for the 23-24 school year, it was a little bit of a shorter summer. So we're kind of feeling that right now. But all teachers come back, like I said, July 26th, next Wednesday, and then students come back on Thursday, August 3rd. So the school year's on us right now. I know there's a lot of interest in positions that we may still have vacancies in, and Mr. Hamby and I were talking about that today. It can be kind of frustrating this time of year. We had a retirement today in a certified position in one of our schools. So we've got about 10 teaching positions that we're still seeking to fill right now. A couple of those have had offers put out, and we're just waiting to hear if the person accepts the job, but we are still seeking the normal. We're typically looking for a couple of special ed teachers, maybe a math teacher at this time of year, but surprisingly, as we look at the vacancies today, we've got 4 or 5 elementary positions that we need to fill. So HR is diligently working on that. We do have 3 custodial positions, and those are also not easy to fill these days. And then we've got 2 computer technician positions, computer techs, to work in our technology department. And then there are a few other classroom aides, maybe clerical type positions. Those tend to be a little easier to fill, but we are still working hard to be prepared for students on August 3rd. And then the other item I have on the agenda there is Kelly Education Partnership. Kelly Education is a staffing agency that specializes in working for school districts to help get substitute teachers. And I know that you guys are very aware of the trouble we've had really since the pandemic of securing enough substitute teachers to cover our needs. Certain days of the week are often worse than others. Fridays probably being the worst, but it is discouraging for a teacher to come into a building in the morning and have a principal or assistant principal approach them and say, oh, by the way, during your planning period today, I need you to fill in the blank because we can't secure enough substitute teachers. And Kelly Education specializes in recruiting subs, and they've done it successfully for local districts around here who spoke very highly of them. And we have been doing this for years with custodial. We would use a staffing agency to help us get custodial subs, and we decided to give it a shot with classroom substitutes this year to see if it will help ease the burden. We still maintain control over who's in our buildings. We're not just completely turning over the keys to a company. We still have our HR office will still have a lot of insight. As a matter of fact, Kelly Education will have an employee on site here working with our HR office, so they'll be hand in hand still. But we hope that will be a change for the upcoming school year that will help us secure more subs than we've maybe been able to the past couple of years. And I'm happy to answer any questions about either of those topics if you have questions or comments.
In terms of hourly salary, how does it compare?
It will be the same. They use our rates, so there's no change there.
I do want to say I appreciate you answering the questions that I sent you.
Yes,
ma'am. Not send those all to the board, but I questioned pretty hard some parts of being familiar with temporary employment that maybe others are not informed of. I think my biggest concern with this is we had a policy in place, and you said you didn't see that as a violation of that policy. However, that policy was put in place in 2010 with the sole intent that the school district would be providing substitutes. So clearly this changes that route. So that policy is going to need to be addressed in some form because just simply of the wording of it. And I think I would not be doing my constituents if I didn't ask these questions. Applicants approved by the district office whose names are maintained on the district substitute list may work as substitute teachers. So clearly Kelly Services is going to be hiring these people. I realize that the requirements you have here are their requirements also. I also realize that if somebody comes into the building and they're not doing a good job, the principal has every right to say this person's not coming back, and I get that. And I don't guess y'all are aware that the fee to sub is $109. That's what's on the website now for certified employees, $85 for non-certified. But Kelly Services is going to get more than that. So, I mean, we understand all of that. My concern was if you have an opening like right now, you got some classified openings and they put somebody in that position and you go, well, they're doing a great job. We just need to hire this person. Well, you can't do that because I know that in the agreement, there has to be a period of time passes before you're allowed to do that.
We could if it was a critical position. There would be a financial obligation, but it's only a 90-day requirement, so we're only talking 3 months that the person would have to work for Kelly before they'd be eligible to be hired by us. So we didn't feel like that was it's not like there's a 2-year time limit or anything. It's just.
Right, but even a semester is still, as a bigger amount of time because obviously they get paid more to work for the district than to work through Kelly Services. So that's a moot point at this point because I'm sure that the contract has already been signed and that's already been done. It is a contract. It's not really a partnership. They're not really giving us anything. They're making money from this or they wouldn't be doing it.
It's a contract where they make money on providing the subs.
Right.
So it is a percentage. That percentage doesn't cost the school district much because there are additional costs that we incur. So if a sub made $100 a day, just to make it simple, there are affiliated costs we have to pay. We have to pay the Social Security, which is 6 3/4%. And then
7.65 with Medicare, like.
okay, 7.65 if it's, so that's a cost we don't, that's also in that fee that Kelly
Right.
pays. But if it's a former employee, someone who's retired from the school district, which we have a fair amount of people that come back and sub for us, then we also have to pay a 24% fee to the retirement system that just goes away. We don't have to pay that.
Right. And they'll be happy because they
And the
don't have
employee doesn't have to pay the 9%.
Right.
So it's not a big financial change for us. I agree it's a change, but it's not we don't anticipate there being much of a financial implication at all.
And the one question I did not ask before, but I want to ask now is, for a long-term sub, what will that pay be?
So our policy right now calls for the first 10 days at the sub rate, and then it goes to a substitute's daily rate. And I think all of those fees are, I think it's negotiated at whatever the rate is plus 30% for Kelly. But again, if that was a long-term sub, so
So I guess let me rephrase the question. I noticed on Pickens' website, they're going to pay $218 and some odd cents a day for long-term subs, which for somebody in our district, in fact, there's a couple of them have talked with me. They're like, they want that daily rate if they agree to do that. And we have some retirees who've only been doing long-term subs.
we do.
So they know that after that 10 days, they were going to get their $300 and whatever dollars. Some of them were making that amount. So that's my question. Is there a set fee? Like in Pickens County, I know it's $218 and some odd cents. That's what's on there. So are we going to, do we have a set fee or are we going to stick?
Our practice
to
has been the fee, the substitute rate for 10 days.
Right.
And then it goes to the daily rate, depending on the individual, whether they have a bachelor's.
So that's not going to change?
That, there's no intention of changing that. I don't think there was any language that changed that in the agreement.
No, I was asked to provide the daily rate. The teacher's schedule converted to a daily rate for the use of that. And part of their contract also obligates them to fund the software application that we use to communicate and schedule, or communicate with and schedule our substitutes as well.
Okay.
So they took over our payment to software company
Right.
that we use. So that actually would negate some of the additional costs for people that are not members of the retirement system.
And lastly, the training of the subs, where we've been doing that, will we continue to do that, or will that be Kelly Services will do that?
Kelly Services will do that, but our HR office has, the training will be
Will be involved?
very similar, and it will have everything that we were requiring will still be offered to substitute, so it's not a substantial change. There are a couple of procedural things just because it's
Right.
a staffing agency, but the material content of, what to do in the building, how to deal with students, that kind of thing. Will be
Okay,
very,
thank
very
you.
similar.
But one of the main reasons for this is to take a little pressure off of our principals and teachers who have to be out. Because we've had a problem at times getting subs. Am I not correct there?
Yes.
And this should relieve that? Is that what we're after? That's
We're hopeful
the
that
main purpose, I guess.
our fill rate, which is something Mr. Leroy would look at pretty regularly in the past, just our sub. So if we had 50 teachers out on a particular day, I guess we had, some Fridays, we probably had that many out. What was our fill rate? So were we able to fill 40 of the 50 and have an 80% fill rate, or, something less than that? We want our fill rate to be higher because, as I mentioned earlier, it's very discouraging for a teacher to lose planning time because they're having to cover for someone else who we don't have a sub for. So our goal is to not,
Eliminate that.
we want to eliminate that situation. And
Hope this works.
we think that Kelly can help us with that.
The only question I had was, and this is probably only specific to, say, some very, unique, say, career and tech classes. If, say, the ag classes or FFA is going to National Convention in Indianapolis and they know they want a specific sub for that specific week, do they then still have the autonomy to pick their own sub for those specific dates and not be
Because
required?
we still use the same software system, they're
Yeah.
just paying for it now. But the teachers can still arrange that ahead of time, they can still select we kind of joke the Fab Five, a teacher can select their 5 favorite subs and the system will contact those people first. All of that remains the same.
You can block people that you don't want.
Any other questions? Thank you. All right, Mr. Shigley, our June financial report.
So for the first thing I would note is that this is a tentative or a draft financial, because the June 30th is the day that lasts 2 months, really. We did receive today and booked the county tax receipts. So the first line item there on local tax revenue is going to be increased by roughly $950,000. So a very good year, a positive variance on the revenue side. We benefited from a very favorable interest rate environment on all of our tax receipts. And we saw a positive variance on state aid as well. So not quite as anomalous as last year, but we're still, riding the waves of increased property assessment values, some of the federal stimulus funding offsetting some costs. So we're going to be looking at a fairly substantial residual fund balance this year. On the expenditure side, we did spend a little bit more than the initial approved budget. One of the main contributors to that is in the support services for central staffing, which is where we recorded the entirety of that holiday bonus or the January bonus, December bonus. So that would lead to about $1 million variance right there in that function area. And then some overruns for costs in the facilities department, just because of the cost of commodities and upkeep of some of the buildings with some unknown or unplanned for expenditures. Are there any questions I can answer on the financial side?
I have one question. On the expenditure side, under elementary programs, it looked like all of the other ones spent more than, were over budget, but yet, in the elementary programs, there was like $2.5 million, so.
There's been a historical practice in the budget, just for budgeting simplicity, to record the budgeted value for substitutes, the cost of separation benefits, so earned leave that was not taken, things like that. that has always been budgeted specifically in that elementary program's function. So when we report to the state where we spent our money, we are depicting our expenditures accurately by the source or by the location of their expenditure. But where you may see for career and technology programs, a $260,000 excess, part of that is going to be those charged benefits and substitute costs that are offset by the budgeted values in the elementary program area. One of the changes I have made to this year's budget is to start to break those down. Now, I haven't allocated them by every single one of those functions, but you might see 70% devoted to elementary, 30% devoted to high school or career and tech, and so those will start to normalize a little bit in the future.
Thank you.
In terms of the disbursements report, really just a lot of volume on finishing out the Seneca Middle School project. So large payment apps on that project to Trejo, who is our construction management firm, and then some standard expenses in food service and general supplies and federal grants. So any questions on that report?
Anyone have any other questions? All right. Thank you. Then we'll let you continue with a policy.
Sure. So this is a new policy that has been issued by, or suggested, I think is probably better terminology, by the South Carolina Board of, or Association of School Boards, and it addresses credit card use. So there is, under the state auspices, a credit card program that's sponsored by Bank of America called the P-Card program. That's for any governmental use, and so we have subscribed to that program for quite a while. This is the first credit card policy to be promulgated by the state, and so it is an optional policy, but at this point we are choosing to recommend it, basically outlining the internal control processes for ensuring that the cards are being used in conjunction with the state articulated policies, who can access them, when they can access them, what are the protocols if they are compromised, or if there are charges that are that manifest themselves that are outside of what those policies would allow. And so there is, for internal board reference, there also is a manual that has been updated that if the board is in support of the policy, we would promulgate out to the buildings for their review and adoption. Probably the most prominent change is a sign-out log where staff members who wish to access one of the cards would have to sign it out and then sign it back in with their receipts, which would limit a lot of the chasing down unknown transaction values. Are there any questions that I can answer in particular on the verbiage?
Is this straight from what the state has proposed?
It is not, no, not exactly. There is some change in the third paragraph where the language has been added that the cards must be accounted for at all times. And if the card is being accessed by a staff member other than the card holder, it must be signed in and out by the staff member.
So the bookkeeper from each school would be responsible for making sure.
That's correct.
I know, sign it.
Any questions? Okay. All right, Dr. Thorsland, paid parental leave.
Yes, and as you know, you passed a parental leave policy earlier in the year, and we were doing that not knowing whether or not the legislature would pass a parental leave policy that would affect all school districts in the state. So ours was passed, put in place, and you can see later in the agenda, we're going to ask you to rescind that policy that you passed just a few months ago because the state legislature did pass a parental leave bill. And this policy, GDCC, is the paid parental leave policy that will correspond directly to the legislation. So we have to, because it's legislation, I mean, it's not like we can't, it actually went into place, I believe, June 26th. So, of course, we have to do what state law says we have to do, but This is more or less housekeeping to get our policy up to date with state law. So over the next couple of months, we'll ask you to do the 2 readings on that to make this new leave policy part of our policy manual. And we'll rescind the policy that we had in place. I will tell you, I think the policy that we had crafted was a better fit for school districts because of the unique environment we have with, employees, the majority of our employees working 190 days instead of, 240 days a year. But we have to deal with state law. So this new policy does that.
All right, any questions on that? Mr. Handy, long-range building plan.
Yes, and to clarify, this is not the full 10-year plan. This is where I'm going to come to you guys and ask that we get you to approve the first couple of years based on our facility study that we all went over and looked at, where we have about, in the facility study, a little over $21 million right now estimated that work that needs to be done in the next 2 to 5 years for us to maintain the buildings that we have the way we need to. So what we're asking in this is not a full long-range plan, but for permission to spend up to $25 million from beginning with part of the bonds in '24, which I have estimated we'll have about $13.7 million left of that after we pay out part of it for Seneca Middle, pay out part of it for the Y, and some other things where we have to do technology and things that we consistently keep in there. And then we would use 11.3 from the 25 bond sales to get us to that $25 million number. And the reason we go from 21 to 25 is there are a couple of reasons. One is that we don't know if the cost is going to continue to rise for the things that we have in here, and it's mainly roof, HVAC systems, paving, those kind of things. But we've also undertaken a study recently on our athletic lighting that we're going to need to upgrade and update, and some other things like that come along with that. So that's why we're asking for up to $25 million of the next 2 years worth of bond money to begin working. The reason we're asking for that separately and now is because there is a lot of logistical work that will go into planning that with the shorter summers and those kind of things. Putting a roof on a building is a very difficult process. So, we're going to need all the time we can to plan out. Changing over a mechanical system in a building is a difficult process, and time consuming. So we want to make sure we have ample time to do it, and we have the funding ready to go. So Josh and his team can go ahead and start working with our contractors to prepare these tasks. And we're sticking to what we discussed and what's in here in the 2 to 5 year range. So the only deviation would be later on when we go in the fall and we look at the survey results and we decide what the 8 to 10 years beyond these two are going to be, then we might tweak it a little bit, because we don't want to spend $3 million in school if we're going to make some changes.
Okay. So this is something you would like us to approve tonight?
I would, if at all possible, because that just gets our maintenance team a little bit more time to start working on planning things out. Like we could do some paving during that week we have off, and anything after July 1, we can use the bond money from February of '24 to spend. So we could do paving during that week. We could do some other things. So we're going to be piecemealing it together as best we can. So.
All right, we will.
Steve, you're saying 25 million?
Up to 25. The total in here is a little over 21, but like I said, with those other additions, we've kind of talked about some. We would like to have the flexibility to be able to do some of those and to make any cost adjustments that are going to come up with roofing and paving and mechanical systems. Hopefully they'll start trending back down a little bit. We'll see.
And we can certainly keep you informed of what's getting scheduled when. So if we are able to schedule some paving during that week in October,
sure,
we can keep you up to date on what's being scheduled. But no surprises, just what's in that book outside of the athletic items.
Outside athletic stuff, yep.
Has anyone had any questions on this? I think we've all been through that plan and pretty much approved it, so since this is not a policy, let's go ahead and vote on this now. I'll ask for a motion to approve $25 million of bond money over the next 2 to 5 years to complete the first part of the long-range building plan. Okay, Sandy. Second?
Second.
All right, all in favor? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Dixon, back to you.
Okay. So I'm going to speak a little bit about the community eligibility provision for National School Lunch. This is something that we spoke on probably 2 or 3 meetings ago. And we have now received approval from the State Department of Education to move forward operating as CEP for the grade span K to 8, which was our initial recommendation. It's a very complicated topic, so I'm going to do my best to try to whittle it down and articulate it with some brevity. But a district or a building becomes eligible when 40% of the students in that building are eligible for some sort of federal program or otherwise meet the federal eligibility criteria for free lunch or what the federal poverty chart is what dictates the eligibility for a free lunch. At that point, you can participate in community eligibility, which means every child in that building receives 1 free lunch or 1 free breakfast. At that point, we are no longer charging any revenue or sales to any student, regardless of if they are reduced status or paid status. In terms of their family income, everybody is treated as a free student. On the back end, we would then go to the federal government and claim a reimbursement for the total volume of the meals we've sold at that building. Now, in order for you to receive a federal reimbursement for all the meals you've sold, the magic number is 62.5% of your children qualifying. At 40%, you're going to receive a full reimbursement on much less, or a multiplier of 1.6%, so much less than every meal you've sold. So the conventional wisdom has been that unless you are in the high 50s or low 60s as a percentage of your students that qualify, it's not fiscally tenable to operate CEP at a building. At this time, we have qualified district-wide based on averages. So what I've provided and what was the foundation of our recommendation was to show the qualification percentages at different grade spans, which taper their way down the older our students get. And then to show the level of participation at different grade spans, which also taper their way down as we increase with age. That's a fairly universal observation across school districts nationwide, is that as kids get older, they seem to be eating meals at school less or qualifying for submitting for those programs less. So what that means for us is that at our elementary and middle schools, by operating CEP, we would recoup reimbursements at a level that would actually be beneficial to us compared to where we're currently operating. At the high school level, we would see a reduction in revenue, or basically because we don't have enough kids qualified and we don't have enough kids participating, but we are no longer charging those students who we would be charging, we would see a reduction in revenue from our current status. So that was what led to that recommendation. There was a proviso that was passed by the legislature, is pending with the legislature, I believe, that would require the board to take action and to vote on a resolution to express why we would participate at certain buildings but not others. We don't have to do that this year. That takes effect in the 24 and 25 school year. But I thought that it would be prudent to explain the functionality of the program, make sure that the board is comfortable with the recommendation and the metrics behind it.
Anyone have any questions?
So we're approving the elementary and middle school, but
Correct.
not the high schools.
Correct. And in subsequent years, we, you know, if we see that the program's beneficial and we decide that we would like to go to the K-12 level, we can file for that in future years. Some of the difficulty of this is eligibility rates and direct certification rates are pushed out by the federal government and our state education department. And then there's a fairly prompt turnaround required to submit what your intents are by the activation of the programs July 1st.
So on the gain for both elementary and middle, what are we doing with that gain?
That remains in fund balance or cash resource in the cafeteria fund. So currently, I mean, this year, some of the things we've done with that money is we've purchased the emergency generators devoted to the cafeterias in many of the school locations. We've had a couple of walk-in coolers that have failed, a milk cooler that has failed. So we have reinvested in equipment and resources in that fashion.
We're also buying all the kitchen equipment for Seneca Middle School. right?
We are,
yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Up to $1 million though.
So it is intended to be a not-for-profit, and that's, you know, these numbers are just predictions, and it's difficult to assess where we're going to be at. So, you know, the preference would be to be operating in the positive versus the negative.
We don't have to pay this back after so many years if we've gotten a net gain of, you know, X number of million from this.
We do. We don't have to pay it back. We will receive a notice from the state that says you've accumulated too much cash. Their metric for that is 3 months' worth of average expense. So, you know, from a rainy day fund perspective, that may not appear to be that much cash resource. But then we submit a plan to them as to what we're going to spend it on. And we're in the process of doing that right now. So I've communicated with Mr. Whitrock, our Director of Facilities, and also the leadership of the nutrition group, and asked them for items that are failing, need to be, you know, so we've in addition to Seneca Middle School, which is part of our capital budget, we've identified quite a few items that could stand to be replaced, and that's what we're using it for.
I feel like if we're getting additional revenue in our food service, we should be able to use that to fund things in our schools that we have to purchase.
Specifically for food service.
Lunchroom tables. We wouldn't need lunchroom tables if we didn't serve meals in schools. So to me, the food service, that's a fair expenditure to charge to food service. So that's what we try to do, and that keeps the food service program from being a draw on the general fund budget for us. So it's kind of the way we've operated. So no action is necessary.
No action is necessary, but we will need to get into the routine of doing that annually.
Starting next year, but we just want to make sure everybody's comfortable with the plan we have going forward for this school year.
Does anybody have any questions, any comments? All right.
All right. So the updated board calendar for this year, this is not something that we have to do, but I will just point out that with our new calendar, the schools will be closed the week of October 9th. That is our kind of our fall break after the first 9 weeks. So we just wanted to bring the option of going to a single board meeting that month. So now the district office will be open, we'll still be here, so we could have the meeting. We just thought it might be good to go to one meeting that month because of all the school sites being closed that week. And I don't necessarily think this has to be done tonight. If you want to do it, if you feel comfortable doing it, that'd be fine. And then right along with that is board meeting calendar for 2024. And there's a state law passed a few years ago that says that board meetings have to be updated for a calendar year, not a school year. So when we're looking at January, we can't go January to June. You know, it would seem to make sense to go July to June when scheduling board meetings, but the law says calendar year, so we have to do the whole all of 2024. So this is just getting us ready so we can get the website updated and that type of information out there to the public. We did try to look at the breaks now that we have this modified year-round calendar, at least a footprint set out for even 24, 25. We looked at that, and we feel like these dates will be pretty solid. And this one certainly could wait until next school board meeting. There's no reason, Ms. Bay, we need this immediately. So this one could certainly wait. They could both wait. But just wanted to present those to you for just getting these tasks done and getting the public notified.
Why would we want to wait? We can go ahead and take care of it tonight.
It's fine. It's not an earth-shattering decision. It's pretty routine, but I don't want to.
All right, let's go ahead and vote if no one has any objections to those. First of all, well, let's just do them together. The updated FY23 board meeting calendar and the FY24 board meeting calendar. I will entertain a motion for those two to be approved.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion whatsoever? All right, all in favor? Okay, thank you. All right, that's done.
Thank you. And then the last thing with my name beside it here is board goals for 23-24. And based on our last meeting, which was 6 weeks ago, it was a long time. We did kind of look on those board meeting dates. There shouldn't be a 6-week break anymore. But anyway, we tried to take comments that were made during the board retreat and incorporate these into our board goals. Of course, this is a document you own, so we can change the format, but Ms. Dodd did a great job, I thought, capturing and communicating, I think, what you intended. And we just submit these to you for approval. Again, I don't want to feel like I'm pressuring you, but with the teachers coming back next week and principals coming back Thursday, it is nice to be able to say these are approved, but we could certainly do it in August if need be.
I did not see, and maybe I just overlooked it, or maybe we didn't talk about, something specific to do, but anything in there about improving teacher morale? I thought we talked about that in the retreat, but did I overlook that?
It is not on here. We had conversation about that in the retreat, and it was, when I was going through and trying to find the best way you would actually put that in there, and there was some conversation we had about the balance between when you say we have to improve teacher morale, does that give the impression that our teacher morale is low? But we can certainly go in there and find a better way, or maybe a cleaner way to say that if it's something important you want to put on that last board goal.
And I think teacher morale should always be at the forefront. Not that it's, perhaps bad at.
Well, let's say maintain high.
High morale
Teacher
for a
morale.
positive work environment.
Okay.
To help, maintain a good recruitment of highly qualified workforce.
Okay. Can we say employee morale rather than
Sure.
just teacher?
Yeah.
So that we're
Absolutely.
including everyone?
Yes.
Were there any other recommendations on any changes that need to be made to this? Then, Mrs. Dodd, will you read that back to us, how it's going to be added?
Sure. I'm trying to get the wording just right. But certainly we want to maintain a positive work environment and positive teacher morale, so I'll work on that word, but I think maintain a positive work environment and still working on that word, and employee morale. I think you could say it that way. Do you want there to be a follow-through sentence that says through, so that we list specific things that we're doing? That would take a little bit of time for us to establish what that would be, but.
I mean, we're not doing that for all the others. I mean, you know, a SMART goal being specific, measurable. I mean, we're not doing that across the board uniformly, so I think if we just all keep that in the forefront, a broad statement.
Would it be okay to, if there are no changes to what's on here, approve these initially, and we'll wordsmith something, and we can even email it, and then, I guess, kind of put a final stamp of approval next month. But then we could at least tell principals and teachers, here's what we're doing, with the added goal of this that'll be approved next month, something in that. And that way we can get I don't want to try to get now, maybe Miss Dye can do it, she's pretty good with words, but it might be better if we have a chance just to write it and bounce it off of you guys and go back and forth before final approval. But if there's nothing that you see that needs to be corrected on the sheets that you have in front of you, or the document in front of you, then we could go with that, with the one addition of an, morale, satisfaction type goal.
So are there any other changes, additions? Anybody else? Well, then let's, if I could have a motion to approve the FY '24 board goals with the addition of employee morale added to the high-quality workforce.
So move.
Second.
All right, all in favor? Okay. All right, and maybe if you'll just email that out to us, then
We'll work on that Thursday morning and email that out.
that would be great. Thank you. All right, local board approved course, and this is Mr. Smith.
Yes, ma'am. Good evening.
Welcome.
The first item I'll bring to you this evening is a course to be considered for local board approval. My understanding is that this is a follow-up to some previous conversations that you've already had, and you'll recall that principals and students alike have communicated a need for peer mediation and a conflict resolution class that would serve as a prerequisite for students serving as peer mediators within the schools. You may also know that we've historically offered a similar course, but we have not offered that course in recent history, and so we would need a fresh approval for this local school, this local board-approved course. The standards for the course were developed in alignment with the South Carolina guidance counselor standards that are affiliated with conflict resolution, and so and they're also very consistent with the course that has historically been offered. Originally, I think the plan was to communicate and seek board approval through the fall so that it could be offered in the spring. But I will say that there's enough positive energy and readiness on the part of schools that we actually are bringing this course to the board tonight for consideration and possible approval.
All right. Anyone have any comments, any questions on it?
I think
All
this
right.
is phenomenal,
I
actually.
it is too. I think it is too.
Worked before, I think it can work again.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, then if I could have a motion to approve the local board-approved course, conflict resolution.
So moved.
Second. All right.
Okay, thank you. The second item is grading policy, specifically IKA-R. The School District of Oconee County grading policy is actually written in alignment with South Carolina Department of Education grading policy. But the current version really includes a lot of very specific verbiage that is perhaps copied and pasted straight from the South Carolina document. What that means for us is that every time an adjustment or an edit or a change is made to the South Carolina policy, ours becomes obsolete and we need to bring it back to you. And so what you'll see there is a lot of changes that take that specific verbiage out, and simply under each heading and each topic, they stipulate that we will remain in alignment with South Carolina policy. That means that when they make a change, we'll still be more stable and consistent with this policy. And so this is one that we bring for your consideration this evening.
All right, I think we'll save all the policies to go under action items if we can. But did anybody have any questions on this one? I think it's pretty,
Makes
Sandy, will you
sense.
scroll down to course withdrawals? Maybe not.
it's on page
That's-
6.
That's the conflict.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, there's a thing in there that talks about course withdrawals, and it singles out ALO courses, advanced learning courses, but I think that applies to all courses, if I'm not mistaken. And I think that's probably just a copy and paste situation.
It'll pull up on mine and it says in red, the district will apply the criteria for all ALO courses according to the South Carolina Uniform Grading Policy.
Right, and I think that ALO should not be there, but I may be wrong. Because I think it's talking about course withdrawals as a whole and not just advanced learning opportunities.
Sure. I think we'd be happy to review that. I know that some of the specificity under each topic, for example, under honors topic, it's stipulated that we're going to be in compliance with and aligned with state policy
Right.
for honors courses. For ALO, it might have been specific to that. I don't have it in front of me, but I can certainly check to see that. But my, just from recollection, I believe it was that section was specific to ALO, and so it said we're going to be under that heading. And I'm certain that
And all I noticed was that all the way down the page, it was the exact same thing. So
Except that one was-
might have just been a copy paste.
very well.
So if you just kind of look at that and make sure that it's accurate and that we don't take out that ALO.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Finally, bring for your consideration and discussion policy IKADD-R under credit recovery. As you know, credit recovery is a proficiency-based option for students who've completed the course, but they've done so unsuccessfully. Students who participate in credit recovery, they receive targeted instruction on unmastered concepts, and when they do demonstrate proficiency, they're able to earn credit for those courses, and we use Apex largely as a tool for that model. The changes before you tonight are designed really to do three things. Number one, clearly specify eligibility criteria for these courses. Two, to set grading criteria that are fair for all students, and fairness was a key consideration under this section. And just to provide clarity with the changing calendar, changing from August 15th to the beginning of the school year.
Anyone have any questions on that one? Changes are really minimal on it. All right, since there's a question in IKA-R, I think it might be beneficial just to wait. That one's not final, is it? We can wait for next month.
We can wait.
Okay, to do that one. But as far as the content and credit recovery, the changes on policy IKADD-R, did anyone have any reason not to vote on that tonight?
I don't see anything in here about seat time recovery. Is there a different policy that covers that?
I believe that seat time will probably be referenced in somewhere in the attendance policy. I think that some of our discussion around credit recovery is the students that are receive a failure to
Right.
attend as part, as during the main course, would they or would they not be eligible for credit recovery? I believe that the stipulation here is that the student must earn a final grade that is a minimum grade. That actually covers that, because the student that is withdrawn for failure to attend doesn't earn that final grade, and thereby, by our policy, doesn't become eligible to participate in credit recovery.
Correct.
Yeah, and I think there's, the state law actually is the seat time law, so it's not something that, I mean, it's the 120 hours is defined, and then the absence requirement is there too.
Okay.
So I think
Might be
that's
getting ahead.
separate, yeah.
Might be the attendance part, I didn't think.
Okay. All right, so does it, we can vote on it later, but are y'all okay with the policy as it is?
Yeah.
All right, then we can vote on that with the other ones. All right. Let's look at policy ID, school day. Dr. McDonald.
All right. So you can see in policy ID, we've added a section that just talks about attendance for middle and high school classes and how that attendance is taken at each individual class. And so, we just want to make sure we're discouraging students from missing parts of the day, because even though they're not missing the entire day, that can still affect their ability to earn credit. And then we remove the section about the length of the school day for elementary school students needing to be at least 6 hours, because we do know that, if you reference that second to last paragraph there, the number of hours in the instructional day may vary based on the board. It doesn't have to be uniform by, policy. Are there any questions about that one?
No, makes perfect sense.
Move forward.
All right, I think we'll go ahead and vote on that one tonight. No one has any issues with the wording of it. All right, and then I think your next one is the student attendance.
In the student attendance policy, JE, you can see that we take out the verbiage around the number of days in the school year and how high school students receive half credit and units of credit based on the number of days. And instead, we've included what's considered a lawful and unlawful absence, as well as some verbiage at the bottom that just makes folks aware that the state board recognizes that truancy is an educational issue, and that, all reasonable and educational sound corrective action should be undertaken by the school district before we resort to referring them to the juvenile justice system. Anybody has any questions on those changes?
One thing that's changed there is we actually, for the year that just ended and for next year, we don't have 90-day semesters. We have an 88-day semester and a 92-day semester. And again, our policies can't supersede state law anyway, so.
Any questions on this one at all? Another one that we can vote on tonight. And again, these will be voted for first reading, so if there's anything that comes back, we have another option. Student absences and exams.
All right, so for policy JH, we again removed that exact same verbiage that Dr. Thorson just alluded to, because we have those different days in our semester. And then we added paragraphs down about how many parent notes, after a certain amount of parent notes are entered for elementary, middle, and high school students, that the district does reserve the right to require medical excuses for student sickness. Of course, and that would be to try to combat truancy.
Can they bring a medical excuse for a prior parent note if they, say, forgot to get the medical excuse from their doctor?
As of right now, we do ask for those notes to be in within 5 days of that absence. So they're not supposed to. You're supposed to get it in. But I'm sure that principals would use some discretion if they realized that there was an outstanding circumstance, extenuating circumstance that didn't allow that note to get in.
We're still struggling with attendance. you look at the number of attendance plans in our district, it is high. And I think schools across the state and nation are probably struggling with the same thing, but we have got to get attendance under control. And there are parents out there, certainly not the majority, but there are a select few who will just write a note. You know, Johnny wasn't feeling well. Johnny wasn't feeling well. Johnny wasn't feeling well. And if we have to continuously excuse those, it just, at some point we need to get a little reinforcement that Johnny was in fact sick.
Absolutely.
All right, any questions on that one? And then in that same one, we have the administrative rule.
And in the administrative rule, you'll just notice that we took out the verbiage regarding approval of absences in excess of 10 days in the makeup work section there as well. So, and we're going to address that procedurally.
Any questions on that one? Okay. All right, we will add several of those policies to our action items, but let's look at our current action items. And the first one is the rescinding of the policy of paid parental leave. I don't know that there needs to be any conversation on that. So if I could have a motion to rescind policy GCC-GDC-R2, paid parental leave, to rescind that first reading approval.
Which one are we doing now?
To rescind our policy
So moved.
under the action items.
So
First
moved.
reading,
Yeah, so moved.
sorry.
Second. He moved, I second.
Okay.
I was already past it.
So moved.
I had to go back.
I'm sorry.
I jumped on it, so I have to read it.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor? All right, so on first reading, we have rescinded our paid parental leave policy that was initially passed. All right, our second policy is JICDA Code of Conduct, and this would be the second reading. Does anybody need an update on that? I think we've been through it a number of times.
Yeah, so each year, Ms. Hughes meets with our assistant principals, and I think the tweaks were just around tobacco and vape. Mr. Hamby, is that
Yes.
correct? Just,
Okay.
again, continual problem that we have to try to battle every way.
Do you happen to know the number of expulsions that were a result of vaping in school in past years?
I don't know that off the top of my head.
I don't know if she broke it down by that. She gave me the total number.
I was just curious.
We can get that for you,
I'm sure it's a lot.
and share it, but
I just think it's important for parents to understand how big of a problem it is,
It is.
and to pay attention to the fact that there's a new vape store on every corner. I've seen 2 more new ones in the county in the last couple of weeks, and I don't know how we can ban some things by state law, but we can't ban that. So I just want them to be aware that it is a problem, and
I can share some data that Ms. Hughes shared for our newsletter, and that through mid-April, we had issued 219 citations for tobacco vapes. We had faced 44 THC vapes, edibles, or gummies had been confiscated from students throughout the year, and we have had vapes in students as young as 2nd grade.
It is a problem.
yeah, I hope that works.
yeah, and for parents too, not to just assume it's the other kids.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Because it's something that any of our students could be
Susceptible to
uh,
using or being
pressured into using, and talk to your students and make sure they're not,
And as we heard in the middle school presentation that we went to, some of those vapes are coming from home. So, it's the environment, it's a real problem for them.
You can control so much of it at the school level, but there's very little you can do about what's
Absolutely.
happening at home. That's the major problem.
Well, we heard student testimonies that they had, they started vaping in elementary school, and it was either a sibling or at home is where they first picked it up, and it's very alarming, and there's not a lot you can do about that environment, but. All right, then if I could have a motion to approve in second reading, final approval, policy JICDA, Code of Conduct.
So moved.
Second.
All right, all in favor? All right, then let's go back up to some of the discussion possible action items we had tonight. The first one, if we could have a motion to approve policy IKA, well, I guess,
We can still check that and have it correct before second reading.
Okay.
If you
Okay,
are
the
willing
two
to do
together,
that, we
okay.
can still make that change if
Yeah.
it's necessary.
For the grading assessment
yeah,
systems?
okay.
Are we lumping all this into one?
Let's do the first two together.
Okay.
And then I think we can lump the rest of them into one. All right, so policy IKA-R grading assessment systems and policy IKA DD-R content and credit recovery.
Those are the ones we're waiting on, correct?
Well,
Just the
this
first
is
one.
just first reading, so we can have any corrections made before we approve a second reading.
Okay.
So if we could approve those two on first reading, if I could have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All right, any other questions or comments? All in favor? Okay. And then policy ID school day, policy JE student attendance, policy JH student absences and excuses, and policy JH-R student absences and excuses. If we could have a motion to approve those four policies on first reading.
So moved.
Second.
Any conversation, any questions, comments? All right, on first reading, all in favor? All right, now is the time that we have set aside for board member comments. So does anyone have anything they would like to say tonight?
I do.
Okay.
I know everybody wishes I didn't, but I do. I want to thank Jennifer Dodd for giving us the opportunity to see the responses on the community survey on the 10-year plan. I want to tell you that as of 2:30 today, we only had 73 responses. 48 of those are school district employees. 19 have grandchildren, 5 are just interested community members. My concern is, it's out there. People need to take the survey. They want to be involved and collaborate with what we're doing. But to only have 73 responses and the majority of those being employees is a little disheartening to me. In the combined school areas that are in that plan, there's only 5 from Kiwi attendance area, 6 from Tomasi Salem, 5 from Orchard Park, and 5 from Westminster Elementary. So that's 21 of the 73 responses. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you don't have any input at this point, in 5 years, when the decision is made to consolidate schools, then you're gonna have a parade of people who are angry and upset and wanna have their voices heard. Now is the time to have your voice heard. If there's a better plan, or if there's reasons to not go forward with the 10-year plan, then now is the time for us to hear that. Some of us won't even be here when the decision is ultimately made down the road. So I just want to somehow put a call out to emphasize that the community has the opportunity to participate in the survey, and that's what we want to happen. So thank you for allowing me to make the comment.
That is so true. Anyone else?
I want to thank Ms. Parker back there for sharing a little bit about her testimony, and bullying is certainly a problem, so thank you for sharing what you shared, and know that it is always at the forefront, and anything that we can do to help a child in need of being bullied, let us know.
Yes, thank you.
Anybody else?
All right, at this time, I will entertain a motion to go into executive session for personnel items, recommendations, and plans. Okay,
Second.
all right, all in favor? All right, this is the end of the public portion of our meeting. Now we will go into executive session and come back with any decisions. And I appreciate y'all being here tonight.